A trail running video in Nebraska. Riveting, I'm sure. I'll bet you're thinking flat, endless cornfields, right? Well, we could show you cool runs through this. This video is about a trail in a very different part of the state. Hidden in the northwest corner of Nebraska, the Pine Ridge Trail is a rugged, 35-mile gym that offers tough terrain, stunning scenery, and is anything but flat. Join us as we attempt the fastest known time and show you what this trail is all about. The Pine Ridge Trail spans approximately 35.5 miles across the rugged, scenic landscape of northwest Nebraska. Stretching between the West Ash Trailhead and the Spotted Tail Trailhead, it's the largest trail of its kind in the state. With over 4,500 feet of elevation gain and a little more descent when hiking west to east, the trail takes you through a variety of landscapes that highlight Nebraska's less explored public lands. We're planning to submit our time for this trail's FKT, not because we're capable of setting a respectable record, but because there isn't one, and we hope to draw a little attention to this trail by setting a low bar. We opted to start from the West Ash Trailhead for a few practical reasons. One, this trailhead sits 260 feet higher than the Spotted Tail Trailhead, saving us a little vert. Two, it was more convenient logistically for our group and is situated right by the West Ash picnic area. And three, most importantly, I'd heard great things about camping at this West Ash picnic area, and it didn't disappoint. The site offers fire rings, mowed out campsites, picnic tables, and not much else. We spent the evening enjoying the quiet spot and feasting on freshly made Amazing Adams artesian pizzas, masterfully prepared by Mallory and Mason themselves. We got an early start, knowing the trail would push our modest abilities, especially with less than 12 hours of daylight here in the fall. The morning was brisk but calm, perfect running conditions. Though the trailhead is only about a quarter mile from the camping area, Amanda gave us a quick drop-off to conserve a little energy. We set off in the last minutes of darkness, relying on headlamps to guide us past the first few trail markers. Right from the start, the trail begins with no delusions of what it'll be like. The initial stretch ascends quickly to the highest elevation of the entire route. As we reached the top of the ridge, the horizon began to glow, followed soon after by the rising sun. We tackled the PRT as a team of three. As usual, Joe came along to employ his exceptional cinematography skills. He's been dabbling in trail running lately, so I politely requested he join us for the Pine Ridge experience, refusing to take no for an answer. Tanner's a longtime friend, but new to Average Joe's. He loves challenges and the Pine Ridge region, so he was all about this when I pitched it. Strikingly handsome and fit as a fiddle, but struggles with the difference between topo and tapo. As for me and my dogs, we've run the Pine Ridge Trail before with Amanda, my dad, and my younger sister. But once wasn't enough, and I've been wanting to go back and better document this trail ever since. A few miles into the trail, it crosses a short section of private land. Thankfully, the generous landowners have donated an easement, allowing the public to use the trail uninterrupted from start to finish. The trail is well marked with brown posts featuring white caps. However, don't always expect a clearly visible trail on the ground, especially as you move farther from access points. When there is a trail, it's often thanks to wild game, cattle, or existing roads. One thing became clear early on: don't get too comfortable following visible paths without watching for the next marker. We made that mistake near the beginning, discussing what I'm sure was very important matters. We missed a marker that indicated a turn off a Forest Service road. We had to backtrack uphill, which of course added to our total mileage, but before long we made it back up to the marker we missed and were back on course. The first section covers approximately 5 miles between the West Ash and East Ash trailheads. This section goes back and forth between high grassy ridges and plateaus to steep and rugged valleys, buttes, and other erosional features. The last leg of this section drops you alongside East Ash Creek, which you travel alongside to the East Ash trailhead. The evening before, we stashed some food and water here. With cool temperatures and only being 5 miles in, we probably didn't need it, but our next planned resupply wasn't until after mile 17, so we made the most of the easy access point. From here, the trail crosses East Ash Road and follows an ascending valley back atop the ridge. It starts out wide and gradual in the forested bottom, but narrows and climbs more steeply as the trail loops to the south. As you near the top, though, the view is worth the effort. Once back on the ridge, you follow a grassy, wide open area, which is comparatively speaking more flat. The windmill at the top marks the high point from where the trail begins descending into the steep valley below. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with this long stretch through the heart of the Pine Ridge National Recreation Area. A couple years ago, we hiked it in early June, peak tick season. While many parts of the trail had ticks, this section along Cunningham Creek was almost unbearable. But this time in the fall, after ticks had cleared, it marked the start of what was probably my favorite part of the trail. As you descend into the valley, you see a large springhead alcove escarpment, displaying some of the active erosion shaping this rugged landscape. The trail follows the valley for many miles, crossing the creek in several spots. You pass through narrow sections with steep canyon walls, open meadows, and in fall, a striking contrast between the pines and the ash trees along the creek. As the trail climbs out of the Cunningham Creek Valley, it goes up and down along the side hill flanking the main ridge line, before eventually crossing a smaller valley and climbing back atop the ridge. Once you're back on the ridge, you'll see a landscape that's changed significantly since the major fires of 2006 and 2012. Much of the Pine Ridge Trail was burned during these two fires, but the severity is abundantly visible in this section. With snags dotting the hills and charred logs scattered across the ground, it's easy to picture how different the landscape looked before the fires. While beautiful before, it's also cool to have an unobstructed view of the landscape below the then forest, exposing some of the bedrock that's the foundation of the Pine Ridge. Above the Pine Ridge on the south, known as the Table, is composed of sediments belonging to the Ogallala Group, while the White River Group forms the base of the escarpment. However, the trail predominantly takes you through the Arickaree Group. These homogeneous, light tan, fine-grained sandstones and siltstones date back more than 20 million years and were formed as volcanic ash carried by winds from the west, accumulated as aeolian deposits, or were transported by streams and deposited by water. Although the region has experienced minimal tectonic disturbance, you won't find the Arickaree sediments laid out in neat layer cake fashion like many classic sedimentary formations we tend to think of. Periods of erosion between depositional phases and the irregular nature of wind and stream deposition has resulted in a complex, discontinuous pattern of sedimentary layers. Much of the erosion that occurred during deposition is still reflected in the current topography. The Arickaree deposits are often interrupted by discontinuous layers of large carbonate concretions, which formed after the sediments were deposited. How these were precipitated out is a fascinating groundwater geochemistry tale that would bore your typical trail runner, so I'll move on and spare you the details. But just one more geologic note first. While the Arikari contains a significant amount of volcanic ash, the Brule Formation at its base has even more. This ash has weathered into smectite clays which become especially slick and slimy when wet. So if the forecast predicts rain, be aware the roads without substantial gravel cover can quickly become impassable. If you only have time for just one part of the Pine Ridge Trail, I'd recommend this stretch between East Ash Trailhead and the Coffee Mill Trailhead. It contains some of the most scenic areas in my opinion, provides a taste of the diverse landscapes, and it takes you through the most remote areas the trail accesses. As we approached the Coffee Mill Trailhead, we were coming to our first supported stop. Our support crew were waiting at this trailhead for us with chairs, drinks, food, and compliments. After restocking and a short break, we set off again. The Pine Ridge Trail follows Dead Horse Road for 2 miles as it crosses through private ground. It's a nice country road with light use, as we only encountered 2 vehicles while covering it. You leave Dead Horse Road at Forest Service Road 732, and then the trail quickly diverges from the road where you climb back up to the ridge. From there, it winds through hilly sections and across a flat plateau before reaching Chadron State Park. Much of the public ground the trail crosses has grazing permits, so expect to see cattle, the compost they leave behind, and gates. The trail is closed to motor vehicles but open to everyone else: mountain bikers, runners, hikers, backpacking, horses, etc., though horseback riders are asked to skirt around the Chadron State Park boundary. Despite being open to all kinds of use, we've virtually seen none the 2 times we've covered this trail. Both times we've noticed one bicycle track and a few footprints here and there, mostly near access points, with the most visible signs of use near Chadron State Park. This time a trail crew had very recently went over the trail. We saw their tracks and fresh dirt around some of the trail marker posts that had been replaced. We noticed many areas where they had improved or added erosion prevention features, cleared down trees, and in one spot they even left us a nice note on a freshly cut tree using a piece of charred wood. They have also recently added a lot of these little metal signs on some of the trail markers. These are very useful when the trail takes a turn but isn't visible on the ground, as well as where the trail intersects other marked trails, so you know that you're on the Pine Ridge Trail. Partway through Chadron State Park was the only area where it was a little unclear exactly where to go, as the little metal signs on the posts disappeared. Perhaps this is intentional, as there are many great routes through the park. We followed Pine Ridge Trail markers to the top of the park, but after that we could not find another one of those metal signs on the post. The nearest trail to the last marker was titled Pine Ridge Mountain Bike on our map. Since it led us in the direction of the Strong Canyon Trailhead, where we knew the trail picked up on the east side of the highway, we took it through the park to our second support stop. We restocked with water and snacks our crew brought, though the park also has potable water outside of months with freezing temperatures. Last time we did this trail, we filtered water from many of the small streams that we crossed, as well as from some of the windmills along the way. While several of the small streams are fairly drought tolerant, the windmills shouldn't be considered a reliable source of water. While the western half of the trail has decent water sources, the eastern half has far fewer. If you're going unsupported, consider packing enough water to cover the stretch between the park and Spotted Tail Trailhead. We grabbed an extra layer before leaving the state park as the day was growing short. From the park, we crossed Highway 385 and headed to Strong Canyon Trailhead. This section covers large, open, grassy areas broken up by ponderosa pines. The trail mostly climbs for several miles before reaching the ridge, where it dips in and out of smaller valleys. As we got atop of the ridge, the sun was just starting to set. From the ridge, the trail drops down a little into the valley Kings Canyon Road follows. Amanda and Mason felt sorry for our now tired legs and dropped us some water at this location so we didn't have to carry extra weight. After topping off our water and climbing back out of Kings Canyon, the trail drops significantly down into the last major canyon. By the time we got to the bottom, we'd lost all of the sunlight and had to dig our headlamps back out. Luckily, we only had to navigate in the dark for a short stretch, climbing back out of the bottom of the canyon and then over to the Spotted Tail trailhead. While this end mostly had a visible trail on the ground, it was still a bit of a challenge watching for the trail markers in the dark. I've spent a lot of time researching this trail and found conflicting reports regarding its length. Sometimes even the same source varies. The sign at the end says 42.5 miles, while their website says 40. I've never found a complete geospatial file for the trail, and many of the sections I've seen on commonly used base maps don't always match the physically marked trail. Like I've found online, our distances also varied among the three of us. The 35.5-mile route I submitted to the FKT website links all the trail markers between West Ash and Spotted Tail trailheads, excluding backtracking and instances where I did ridiculous things like running ahead to plant a camera and then went back for it. TrailVert is a whole different can of worms, as methods which leverage many sources of data and measurements are doing a complicated calculation rather than just a simple summation of changes like I assumed. Given its complexity and there's no standard algorithm, you'll see different vert estimates for this trail as well. The numbers I show are based on Gaia GPS's calculations from the corrected polyline. Regardless, the main takeaway is that elevation change on this trail is frequent and significant. All said and done, this trail took us every minute of daylight, plus a little extra on both ends. I'm sure an ultra runner would consider this trail an enjoyable morning jog, while others may prefer to take some extra time to enjoy the sights and surroundings by splitting it into a 2-day trip. Or maybe tackle it in out and back sections over time, using the numerous access points. However you decide to enjoy the trail, I hope you'll find the time to explore this hidden gem and give it a little more of the attention it deserves.